PJ Fleck. Now, I just may be misinterpreting the guy, but he just kind of seems like he projects this artificial, it's used car sales, but I'm sorry. That's the way he comes off. And I could just be misinterpreting. But Erica, we have something in common. It's our hatred for PJ Fleck's image that he projects.
Minnesota might be. This is a real scary game.
It's an important game.
Yeah.
The first road game, it's to get FLOYD back. It's the game responding to what happened with the Cooper DeJean thing last year. And I think the other part of this that we got to realize, I brought this up last night when I called in to show with you and Kyle, Don, but you have this game, then you get a bye, then you get Ohio State. So most people expect Iowa to lose to Ohio State. It is so important that Iowa wins this weekend, because if you lose this weekend, you're almost playing yourself out of any playoff conversation, because 3 losses, you're done. And so we expect them to lose to Ohio State. You win this weekend, then you get another week of off. You prep, you clean some things up. Even if you lose to Ohio State, you're going into the Washington game with just 2 losses and still alive. Whether people agree with that or not, they will still be alive with 2 losses. And they'd be alive for potential Big Ten championship game consideration, because the schedule is very favorable, and one of their 2 losses would have been out of conference. So, it is very important. And I just think timing-wise, challenge in a rivalry game, it's a challenge that's on the road, happens to be at night. That's probably not to Iowa's advantage. It's their first real road game. It's a big game. Don, Iowa, Minnesota, rivalry game. I know Eric had a super chat earlier, wanted to know about what you thought about this game. I know you have respect for PJ Fleck. I don't think he rubs Kirk Ferentz the right way. He doesn't rub me the right way either. This is an important game. We don't have to remind people what happened a year ago when Minnesota came to town and the Cooper DeJean thing. So that's got to be in the back of the minds of all these players, especially the coaching staff, I would think, even though they'll never admit that. Getting the pig back is important. That's something that should be talked about and will be talked about. But what are your keys heading into this game? We talked about Minnesota's defense. Offensively, they have struggled, and I can pull up some stats that kind of prove that. But the little bit of Minnesota that I've watched this year, I was not impressed with them offensively. But, hey, if they can make it difficult on Caleb Johnson, Iowa, you could argue, has been zero-dimensional on offense for the last 3 years at least. They are one-dimensional right now. I mean, we have not seen enough consistency with the passing attack, but they are running the ball well. So the question to me is, can Minnesota slow down Caleb Johnson? Because so far, teams are 0 for 3 in that category.
Right. I think priority number 1 to beat Minnesota is to eliminate the home run plays. That's number 1. And I would even say explosive plays are okay if they're just 20 to 29 yards. But we got to eliminate the super explosive. That's 30 or more. And those are the plays that are killing us, of course, is the ones that go more than half the field. So we got to eliminate those. If we can play all day without giving up a single super explosive play, I think we'll win the game. And that's a realistic goal. And that even allows for a few plays in the 20s. We don't like those either, of course. And again, in 10 games last year, we gave up a total of 13. There were even more than 20. Most of those, incidentally, were from 20 to 29. We had 4 super explosive plays in 10 games last year. 4 plays that were 30 or more. That's amazing. That's the best number I've seen in the Big Ten in all the years I've done this stuff. So is it a realistic goal that we can eliminate super explosive plays? Absolutely. We can do that. We just have to be smart about how we line up and how we play.
Minnesota's 97th in the country in total offense. And we talked, I know preseason, I think you and I chatted about, well, I know we chatted about the schedule. And when this game fell on the schedule, I believe it's pronounced Brosmer, Max Brosmer, the New Hampshire transfer. What have you seen out of him, Don? I was not particularly impressed, but his numbers are pretty good. He's thrown for about 69%, 8.1 yards per, I believe this is yards per attempt.
Yep.
And he's only got 3 touchdowns, just 1 INT. He looked to me when I watched him against North Carolina to be a game manager.
Right.
When you look at him in New Hampshire, he's throwing for all kinds of records, right? And he's
right.
Back different system.
They were also setting records for how many times they threw the ball in New Hampshire.
Exactly.
It was a very pass-oriented offense.
totally opposite at Minnesota. So what have you seen from him, and what challenges do they present to the Iowa DBs in the very critical week of cleaning up those big mistakes?
The only game I've seen was the Carolina game. And I thought in that game they didn't give him too much to do. They wanted to be sure that the moment was not too big for him. So they didn't ask him to do a lot. I think, based on what I read, it seemed like he was gaining some confidence with how he could play in the Nevada game. I know his numbers were pretty darn good. Can't remember what they were, but he was at least 70% or maybe a little higher completion percentage.
16 to he was 16 to 26 for $191, a touchdown and a pick.
Yeah, and incidentally, they had at least 3 picks on defense, didn't they? I believe they had 3 for sure.
Minnesota had 3 interceptions, correct?
Yeah, I did read somewhere that the strength of their defense is for sure their safeties. So I think they have more than a couple of good safeties. I think they've even played some other safeties that showed a lot of promise too.
And for that matter, somewhat reminiscent, somebody asked us earlier, that Iowa State, as far as strength of the defense, was the back end of those safeties, which Iowa State gave Iowa fits in that second half. Well, really the whole game, maybe exception being the first quarter at times, but we know how bad Cade's numbers were quarters 2, 3, and 4 in the Cyhawk game. So
one thing I did notice also, based on the game against Nevada, that place kicker had a 52-yarder, I believe, in that game. It was the 5th field goal he's made of more than 50 or more yards. So he's got a big leg. I don't know what his percentages are over the years and all that. I don't know how long he's been a kicker. But he does have the capacity to kick long field goals, as does Drew, of course. So I'd say maybe the place kicker is a wash. I think we have a good one, and so do they. I think it's going to come down to eliminating big plays on the part of their offense and finding a way to have some kind of edge in terms of turnovers. I think that'll go a long way.
Next Saturday, NBC, 6:30 p.m. Central Time for the kick. Hawkeyes and Gophers battle for the Floyd of Rosedale. I'll be coming out with some pre-game coverage preview and, of course, my score prediction later in the week. And then next Saturday night, it will be Iowa postgame with Coach Don Patterson. Don, you and I are finally going to get to do – well, we did a show last week after the Iowa State game. That was not a good day. But you and I hopefully are going to be recapping a Hawkeye rivalry win next Saturday night. And are you ready for a late night, Don?
Yes. And just so you know how this works, I'm going to be taking notes during the game, of course. And I actually have a chance to back the TV up as well because I can fast forward through the commercials and catch back up. So here's my commitment to you, Cory. When the game's over, I'll be ready. We can go on shortly after the final seconds are ticked off.
Absolutely. Game should be done by about 10 p.m. So
no later than 10. Shouldn't run more than 3.5 hours, certainly.
Yeah.
The way these teams like to play, it might be not much over 3 hours.
Yeah. Iowa, Minnesota, next Saturday, 6:30 p.m. Central Time, and post-game coverage with myself and Coach Patterson to follow.